You're listening to the Options Insider Radio Network, the home of the Options Podcast. For more quality options programs, visit theoptionsinsider.com or search for Options Insider Radio Network in your podcast provider of choice. Listeners can also access all of our programming through our mobile app available in the iTunes and Google Play stores. Select programs are also available via live stream at mixlr.com/options-insider. That's mixlr.com/options-insider. Don't forget to follow along with your favorite programs and submit your own questions for the hosts at twitter.com/options, stocktwits.com/options, facebook.com/theoptionsinsider, or via questions at theoptionsinsider.com. Bitcoin, Ether, Solana, Doge, and more. Cryptocurrencies and digital assets are taking the financial world by storm. This exploding market provides everything a savvy trader needs: volatility, volume, and liquidity, provided you know how to find it. That's where we come in. Welcome to the Crypto Rundown. Each week, we'll break down the latest trading activity, trends, and developments throughout the world's leading crypto derivatives markets. If it's moving the crypto markets, then you'll find it on the Crypto Rundown. The Crypto Rundown is brought to you by Amber Data. If you're entering the digital asset class, you'll need access to granular on-chain and market data from multiple venues to power research, trading, risk management, and compliance. Amber Data delivers comprehensive data and insights into blockchain networks, crypto markets, and decentralized finance, empowering financial institutions to apply traditional finance methods to digital assets. Amber Data eliminates the infrastructure setup, integration challenges, and maintenance headaches to access digital asset data, reducing cost and time to market to enter the digital asset class. Learn more and download their digital asset data guide at www.amberdata.io. Now it's time to dive into the exploding world of crypto derivatives. It's time for the Crypto Rundown.
All right, everybody. That music means we are back. It is Monday. It is 2 p.m. Central. It's 3 p.m. Eastern. Time to talk a little bit of crypto derivatives action on the network. Yes, it is time for the Crypto Rundown. My name, of course, Mark Longo from theoptionsinsider.com, as well as from the aforementioned network that continues to grow. Despite our best efforts, we continue to add new shows all the time. 18 plus years in, and 3 new shows hitting the network just in the last 6+ months, 1 hitting just in the last few weeks. So a lot of wild fun out there. So remember, if you're just listening to this and you're coming from the world of crypto, make sure you're checking out the full network. Over a dozen shows coming at you right now, including a lot of great options and derivatives education. For a lot of you I know who are a little bit new to these options things we're always talking about here, then shows like Options Bootcamp and others will be a great tool to get you up to speed on all of the terminology we're throwing around here on the network all the time, like volatility and skew and everything else going on out there. And of course, if you want to go above and beyond, you think you're ready to take that next step, head on over to the pro, theoptionsinsider.com/pro. That'll get you access to not 1, but 2 exclusive new shows, including a lot of unusual activity, great pro Q&As, fun giveaways, live streams. You can come on and ask questions of our guests, all sorts of fun. theoptionsinsider.com/pro is the place to go as we go on over to the crypto hot seat.
Forget about cold storage. It's time to turn up the heat on thought leaders from the world of cryptocurrencies and digital assets. It's time to take their place on the Crypto Hot Seat.
All right, everybody. Welcome to the Crypto Hot Seat, the portion of the show where we welcome on guests from throughout the world of crypto derivatives and indeed beyond, and proceed to pick their brains for the benefit of you, the listener. And next up is a newcomer to the program and indeed to the network. He is Scott Shapiro, the Senior Director of Product Management for Trading over there at Coinbase. Scott, welcome to the Crypto Rundown program.
Thanks for having me.
All right, Scott, as we are wont to do with all of our first-timers here on the network, why don't you go ahead and give our audience a bit of an overview of your background in the world of all things derivatives, as well as what the Senior Director of Product Management for Trading does day-to-day over there at Coinbase.
Yeah, so I'm responsible for, you could think about it as the retail individual investor-facing brokerage that Coinbase offers, which is all about crypto and includes derivatives products, and we'll include more over time. But if you're a Coinbase user and you go to coinbase.com to trade, or you have the Coinbase app on iOS or Android, you get exposure to all the products that I use or that I develop, pre-trade, post-trade, everything in between, from the simplest, easiest way to get your first $5 of Bitcoin all the way through high leverage perpetual futures, API trading, high frequency trading, and everything in between. Again, specifically focused on the individual investor.
Well, Scott, it's good timing to have you on the show right now because you folks at Coinbase have been pretty busy in the crypto derivatives side of the space. We'll get to all that fun in a second, but let's kick things off with the latest announcement you folks have, which is, I know, going to be very fascinating to a lot of our listeners in particular. We're talking about Perps, listeners. Yes, Perpetual futures, that most uniquely crypto of asset classes. Scott, I can't tell you how many seasoned options and derivatives professionals I've had come on the network in the last few years and ask me off the show, what the hell are perpetual futures? They just can't come to grips with these products. So maybe let's start there for some of our listeners who are maybe on the newer end of the spectrum. What the heck are we talking about? What are perpetual futures? And then why is Coinbase so excited about them right now?
Yeah, Perps, aka perpetual futures, are a really unique thing to crypto. They've probably been around for no more than like 6 or 7 years. And what's unique about them and is unique about crypto is because the assets in crypto trade 24/7. They literally cannot be stopped because they'll trade on chain, on decentralized exchanges, as well as centralized exchanges. You have the ability to settle to a 24/7 price feed. And so instead of dated futures that expire once a month or once a quarter, there's just no concept of trading hours in crypto. And so you can constantly settle positions. There's this notion of a funding rate in futures, which is the difference between the spot price, the index price, and the futures price, where longs and shorts settle it depends on the exchange. It can be every hour, every 8 hours, every 24 hours. They're all built a little bit differently. But it just goes forever. There's really no expiration. It's just a way to get levered exposure, long or short, to an instrument. And it could work in other asset classes too. It's not proprietary to crypto. It's just that crypto is one of the very few asset classes that has true, reliable 24/7 spot trading.
Yeah, you're right. I mean, people get into the futures market for the first time, and we see that now with one of our new programs, the Futures Rundown. One of the first things they have to grapple with is that expiration date. They need to be right within a certain window, and perpetual futures take that off the board. They wipe that away. You can indeed buy and hold the perpetual future out there. It is going to be marked against you every day if it goes against you, but you can do so, as opposed to the traditional futures, let's say on crude oil or on corn or on Bitcoin and ETH over there at CME, which have an expiration date out there. So taking away at least one of the pain points, I know, for a lot of new futures traders who are used to maybe buying and holding spot or buying and holding a stock, for example. You go out and buy Apple. There's no expiration date on it. If it goes against you, it's a buy and hold. So you can't really do that in the futures world, but Perps make that a little bit easier. But why are we talking about Perps now, Scott? Why is Coinbase so excited about Perps?
You know, Coinbase, we have our roots in spot trading, one of the first compliant spot crypto exchanges in the US, and have expanded in lots of other places since then. But when you look at the crypto landscape and where the volumes are coming from, they're increasingly coming from perpetual futures and from options. But really, perpetual futures has just kind of taken the crypto trading world by storm over the last few years. And so when we talk to active traders who are interested in levered outcomes and having very specific risk management strategies, they want perpetuals. Like, that is the instrument of choice. It allows for very quick, rapid exposure with 5, 10, 20 times leverage, depending on the product. I think our maximum right now is up to 25x leverage internationally. And it's just a much cleaner way to do that in these very liquid markets. And so that is like the place that crypto traders want to be, whether they're on Coinbase or elsewhere. And for us to be able to appeal to them, we're really focused on building a great perpetuals experience.
Yeah, one of the frequent complaints we've had from our listeners of this program, who, as you might guess, are primarily based here in the U.S., is, man, all the cool stuff happens overseas. Deribit's overseas, which we'll get to in a little bit. And of course, the Perps market is all overseas. And so many of our guests on this program are beaming in from overseas because that's where all the interesting stuff has been happening in crypto for so long. But you're bringing some of that to the U.S. audience here, Scott, with the launch of, I guess it's in beta still, so maybe not an official launch, but Bitcoin and ETH Perps are coming to Coinbase. So those folks here in the US, if you've been hungry to try your hand at Perps, maybe in a more regulated US environment, sounds like, Scott, now they're going to have their opportunity. What can folks look forward to with this beta?
Yeah, we started offering through what's called Coinbase Derivatives Exchange, which is our CFTC regulated venue for offering derivatives.
Not that Boris guy again. Oh my God, that guy just won't shut up on our network, that guy.
Boris is incredible. We would be nowhere without Boris. And even today, just to add on to what you had shared, Boris brought to the world Ripple and Solana perpetuals. So in addition to Bitcoin and ETH, so now have 4 as of this morning available on Coinbase.
You just read my mind. That was going to be my next question. What else can we look forward to outside of the big two? So Ripple and Solana. Those are the next big two. And obviously it's in beta, so it's early days, but what has the response been so far? What are we seeing in terms of volume and uptake from the Coinbase users on the Perps?
It's been very positive. It also coincided with some positive market movements, which is never a bad thing when you're launching a new product. In both Bitcoin and ETH last week, they both had pretty positive weeks. And so, we're just focused on building a really robust experience and offering even more ways for people to trade. So not only we're adding more instruments, but we want to be able to add more order types. We recently launched TWAP orders on Coinbase. We have take profit stop loss orders. We're working on scaled orders, working on chart trading. So you can trade directly from charts and set your limits, modify, cancel, edit orders, add take profit stop loss attached orders, all from the experience. So there's several different dimensions that we're focused on. I can't share specific contracts that Boris and that team are working on, but just know that they're hard at work and focused on building a great set of contracts for everybody to trade.
I'll message Boris after the show, see if I can get him to let the cat out of the bag. But you mentioned the big moves you've seen over the past few weeks. I'd be remiss if I didn't ask you specifically about ETH. ETH has been such a wild product to watch over the past few months, indeed over the past year and change. On our crypto show, we've been talking for a while about ETH. Last year, a lot of ETH fans thought it dramatically underperformed Solana and Bitcoin. They thought this was going to be the year. This was the year where ETH had to kind of put up or shut up and maybe catch up, steal a march on the other two. What happened? ETH fell out of bed the first half of the year. It was the worst performing major futures asset that we track on our futures rundown show. Had lost half of its value by about Q1 into Q2 there. And then it's had this just absolutely astounding resurgence, going all the way from the bottom of our biggest losers list on that show, all the way now to the top of the biggest winners year to date. That show hasn't been running that long, but that is the first time we've seen a product make a move like that, let alone in a few months. It has been absolutely astounding. Pick your adjective. I don't think it's adequate to describe it, Scott. As the head of trading over there, product-wise, at least over there at Coinbase, what are your thoughts in general on this just absolutely incredible move we've seen in ETH over the past month and change?
As a person operating and building a brokerage, I don't have a particular view on which direction assets are going. What's important is that we're able to offer a good experience. And so for us, when we see all-time highs, the thing that we focus on is everything working smoothly? Is the app loading? Is our trades executing as they should be executing? Are charts loading? And that is the area that we've doubled down on, whether prices are mooning or crashing, whether it's 2022 and things are falling apart, or it's 2025 and we're hitting all-time highs. that's the thing that we're really, really focused on. Listing more assets is something that we're also doing more on spot. We're able to do that at an accelerated pace. We're also working on DEX trading to be able to offer a lot of on-chain liquidity and direct to decentralized exchange trading. And so for us, we're kind of price agnostic as long as we're able to offer a quality experience for people to do the volumes and trade the assets that they want to trade.
Moves tend to translate into volume. So from a brokerage perspective, a big move usually is a good thing at the end of the day. People wake up and they want to start trading a little bit of ETH. I've even noticed it in our pro chat and our pro members, folks who don't normally seem intrigued by ETH are suddenly paying more attention. So from a volume perspective, it certainly has been an interesting move out there, Scott. But you mentioned doubling down on derivatives. Let's get to that as well, because the big dog in the crypto option space, certainly for as long as we've been running this show, and this show, I do believe, launched 2018, I believe, maybe a little bit earlier than that. And ever since this show launched, the main focus of our analysis, and when we get into a little bit later, listeners, on the Bitcoin breakdown and on the altcoin universe segments, all of our analysis is going to go down on the Deribit volume over there on Bitcoin and on ETH. That's the two products we've been tracking since the origins of this program. And the main complaint we've heard from listeners of this show, Scott, is this is all great data you're giving us. You're the only show out there really crunching the numbers on Vol and Skew and all these moves out there in Bitcoin and ETH and crunching the Deribit numbers, which for us was just a no-brainer. Deribit is where all the volume is. But for a lot of our US listeners, they couldn't really come to grips with that volume unless they tried to tunnel in with a VPN, and we all know that's, against the terms of service of Deribit. So it was not an ideal experience for a lot of our US-based listeners. But that said, Coinbase just recently, in the last, I want to say, week or so, closed your acquisition of all things Deribit. So potentially offering a glimmer of hope for some of our US listeners. But let's start there. Why was it so important for you folks over there at Coinbase to pick up Deribit now? What does that bring to the table?
Yeah, there's a really interesting triangle that exists between spot, futures, and options. And you see this in TradFi, right, all over the place. You see people use those three instruments to place the kind of trades and get the risk that they're looking for. And it exists in a very different form in crypto, obviously, because of Perps and just the way that kind of the markets have developed around the world in different ways, and different participants have access to different products. And so, again, when we looked at our portfolio and talked to our retail customers, and even more so our institutional customers, they want this, right? They want to be able to trade everything in one place and be able to use all these different instruments to get the exposure in place that trades the way that they want. And so options really completes that triangle for crypto. And Deribit has just been off to the races, building a great product. They have an incredible team and really complement a lot of what Coinbase has had. And so it's a really interesting proposition that we'll be able to build together now that we're closed.
So you know what my next question is, Scott? A lot of our US listeners want to know, that's great. When can I sink my teeth into Deribit? When can I actually go buy a call on Bitcoin or a put on ETH if I'm so inclined over there on Deribit? So you have any insight we can offer those folks?
We're doing our best to work with regulators. And if you look at what we've done with Perpetual futures, where for years this product had existed outside the US and there was no real regulatory above board way for US traders to access Perpetual futures, we brought those to the US fully above board, fully compliant, CFTC regulated, US listed a couple months ago, starting with BTC and ETH. And so we want to be able to do the same thing with options, right? We're going to try to do the best with Deribit all over the world. And it's not just US regulators that have particular nuances and things that they care about, right? There's European and other sorts of regulators too. So all over the world, we want to be able to walk through the front door with regulators and to be able to offer spot, perps, options in the most compliant way possible. And so that's something that we have to figure out. We have nothing to announce specifically on that front with options, but it's an important thing, just given how important the US is to trading.
I'd have to imagine the explosive popularity of IBIT options. It is a good feather to have in your cap when you're talking to the regulators right now saying, hey, look, there is demand for listed options on Bitcoin. And of course, there's a product out there that can put up over 500,000 contracts a day. It hasn't blown up the financial markets. So I think from that perspective, that's certainly an interesting case study to show the regulators, Scott. And what are your thoughts on just the absolutely massive popularity of IBIT options these days?
Yeah, I think it's really interesting. And, IBIT's a good example. You obviously have like the crypto treasuries that have options on their equities as well. I think it's great. There's just lots of different ways to get exposure, and you can access these products, whether it's the notional or it's the derivative through, traditional brokerage accounts. And then if you want the real spot, you want to be able to custody it and send and receive it and access a lot of other cryptos. You can do that on Coinbase and lots of other exchange platforms. And so I think we're so early still that like the tide is lifting all the boats, right? This is a positive sum environment that we're in with crypto just because it's a $4 trillion asset class. And so if people want to trade IBIT options, great. It's awesome that exists. It draws new traders into the fold that will then get interested in other ways to touch crypto over time too. And, as Coinbase, we want to be there for when they're ready for those other types of products that we can uniquely offer too.
In the early days of crypto derivatives and options here in the US, there was a big push for physically settled contracts. We saw LedgerX get into that. That was the use case. I thought everyone was going to be selling puts to take the spot delivery and then turn around, write covered calls on their spot to generate yield. And it made a certain amount of sense. What we have seen since then, it seems like a little bit of falling by the wayside of the physically settled, physically delivered contracts, a move into cash settled. As you folks are expanding into the Bitcoin and indeed crypto options realm, do you expect that trend to continue, Scott? Do you think the trend has moved in the cash settled route, or do you think there is still a place and a use case for some of these physically delivered contracts like I was talking about earlier? Maybe a covered call on your spot, or maybe selling a put as a way to get into the position?
It's been interesting how some of what crypto has developed has been counterintuitive. So I think I would have agreed with kind of the perspective you shared, that it was a little, surprising everything's been so cash settled. I think another one analogous to that is just the dominance of USD-backed stable coins, especially for other markets where people aren't earning income or paying expenses in USD, but they prefer a USD stable coin to settle everything. And so I think there's, real value in having physically settled derivatives, but there's just such a great inertia behind cash settled that I don't think that's going to disappear anytime soon.
You can't fight the tide at the end of the day there, Scott. Well, I appreciate you taking some time out of your day to catch our listeners up on the latest developments of all things derivatives over there at crypto. Boris is going to be jealous. You stole his spot here, Scott. So I expect him to pop up again in the near future to want to steal some of your thunder back. But speaking of thunder, before we roll on with the show, Scott, we like to leave our audience wanting more. So if you have any interesting teases or hints, you can leave them in terms of what they can look forward to. I mean, we already gave them a lot, but what they can look forward to coming down the pike on the crypto derivatives side over there at Coinbase. And now is the time, sir. The floor is yours.
Yeah, I think broadly, we're focused on building, and Brian has talked about this in our last earnings call, Brian, our founder CEO, of building what we call the everything exchange, where you can access everything through Coinbase across asset classes. So we're looking at prediction markets, we're looking at tokenized equities. Obviously, we're deep in futures and options. We want to bring those products globally. We want to make them easier to use. Right now, you have to be pretty sophisticated as a trader to use those. We want to be able to go down the tail and offer those to more users. And you can imagine a world in the future where more things trade 24/7. You have more dedicated price feeds, and you can develop more types of derivatives products on these instruments, right? So the idea of perpetuals on assets beyond just crypto, because you have a reliable 24/7 index, starts to become a reality in the future. And so we're really focused on going well beyond just kind of our crypto spot roots and being fully in the derivatives game and across other asset classes as well. That's more for 2026, but that's where we're focused.
That does seem to be where a lot of these chats I've had with your Coinbase folks lately have been pointing. They said they've had They have CME and other everything exchanges in their crosshairs talking about products like crude oil and others, not just the crypto products. So it does seem like there are some interesting opportunities to be explored in those other markets, in addition to everything we talked about here, of course, the perps and all the fun going on, hopefully with Deribit in the near future, which I know will be music to the ears of a lot of our listeners. Well, Scott, we have to keep on rolling with the show. I appreciate you taking some time to chat with our listeners. Before we go, all the folks know where to find Coinbase, I'm sure by now. But if they want to zoom in and maybe zero in on what's cooking on Coinbase on the derivatives front, where should they go? What should they do?
You go to coinbase.com/derivatives and you can see everything that we offer. And if you're interested in trading broader than that, you can go to advanced.coinbase.com, which is our trading interface.
There you go. Check them out over there, listeners. At Coinbase, the derivatives offerings continue to grow. And Scott, we'll have to have you back on down the road where hopefully we can chat about all of the Deribit options that our listeners can trade here in the U.S. in the near future, sir.
Sounds good.
All right, listeners. Now we have to keep on rolling with the program right on into the Bitcoin Breakdown.
It's time to explore the latest trending activity, trends, and developments across the world's leading crypto market. It's time for the Bitcoin Breakdown.
All right, everybody, welcome to the Bitcoin Breakdown, the portion of the show where we do just that. We break down all the action in the world's leading digital asset. We're talking about Bitcoin. Hope you enjoyed that chat with the folks from Coinbase. It definitely sounds like there is a lot more in the offing on the derivative side coming from Coinbase in the near future. So we'll definitely be chatting with them again here sometime down the road. Yeah, Coinbase coming for CME, I see in our chat. Yeah, that's pretty much exactly what Boris said the last time he was on as well from the derivatives exchange. It seems like it's almost pulling teeth to get them to talk the crypto side. They want to talk about metals, they want to talk about index, they want to talk about crude oil, all these other products out there. So it's a fascinating time. They mentioned the everything exchange. So there we go. Coinbase throwing their tokens in the hat to become the next CME. Will that work out? I guess we'll find out. Is it working out in the Bitcoin market right now? Well, the answer, at least for the near term, is no. But hey, you can't complain with their returns if you've been hodling a little BTC so far this year. Bitcoin kicking off the show a little bit shy of 116,500, 116,440 to be precise on the show. That's down from 119,584. So obviously down a little over 3,000 handles, 3,144 to be precise, since our last show, listeners. And after we've seen this interesting move kind of settling into really a little bit more of the summer doldrums from a vol perspective, weekly vol already pretty low at a 33.40 on our last show, coming down even more to a 31.75 on the weekly vol. Remember, all this data coming at you courtesy of our friends over there at Amber Data. AmberData.io, the place to go to kick the tires and light the fires. 30-day vol, 34.75, already pretty anemic on the show a week ago. Coming in 0.75 of a point to an even 34 right now. So vol remaining in that somewhat anemic range. But then again, look what time of year it is. Look how much movement we're seeing out there in Bitcoin. It does make a certain amount of sense. But if you're out there harvesting the risk premium, as we say, just make sure the juice is worth the squeeze with what you're selling. Getting on out to the 6-month front, the hodler territory was at a 44 2/3 on the show last week, down to an even 43 right now. So even the 6-month vol coming in a wee bit. Can't escape the gravitational pull to the downside right now. What's hanging out in the skew? We did move down a little bit. We did pull back from that around 120 level not that long ago. So probably can expect the skew to be a little bit negative, and that is indeed the case right now. It was pretty much flat on the weekly skew a week ago. It's down to almost a -2 now, about a -1.75. Remember, that weekly skew is really a moving snapshot. It's going to whipsaw around all day long depending on where Bitcoin is trading. So it's kind of a bit of a moment in time right now that it's at a 1.75 to the downside. We try it again an hour from now, it might be completely different. So weekly skew is going to move around quite a bit. A monthly skew is a little bit more of a stable measure, but that still will also evolve intraday as Bitcoin swings around. 30-day skew was flat as well on the show this time a week ago. Now it's swung to a -2.6. So again, as we're retreating for some of these near-term highs, not surprising to see The Bitcoin skew reflecting that and going out to where the hodlers hang out. It was almost a +2 to the upside last week. Pretty much all of that is gone now. It's less than half a point now, 0.4. So pretty much getting to flat, which once again, for the hodlers who like to generate maybe a little bit of covered call premium to the upside, you're not really getting a lot of bang for your buck to the upside right now from a skew perspective. And the overall vol level is also fairly low. So bear that in mind if you're giving away a lot of your upside for not a heck of a lot. Speaking of not a heck of a lot, we've seen IBIT retrace as well, which, again, to be expected. Bitcoin is coming in. You're not going to see IBIT rally, at least not if it's working the way it's supposed to, listeners. IBIT at about a 66 even when we kicked off the show. That's down about exactly 2 points from where it was this time last week. The ADV also coming in a little bit as well, reflecting some of that seasonality that's going on out there in the markets right now. Dog days of summer, not exactly expecting a banger from a volume perspective. But that said, no one told IBIT today because it is north of that already. 603,000 contracts on the tape. So getting a little bit of action back. Probably going to see that ADV drift back up on our show next week. A 30-day vol coming in at about a 36. Again, that is literally unchanged from where it was this time last week, and only about a 2-point premium to what we're seeing over there on Deribit right now. Again, once these Deribit options start trading here in the US, it's going to be really interesting to see the back and forth between IBIT and everything over there at Deribit. Right now, they're already pretty much moving in lockstep, and now once the full US audience can sink their teeth into all things Deribit, will be fascinating to see. Again, 603,000 contracts on the tape right now in IBIT. Let's get out there right now to see what the hot option is in IBIT today, shall we? And you know what? It's all the way out in October. Looks like it might be a bit of a straddle or maybe a synthetic, probably the latter, given what we've seen out there. It's the October 61 calls and the puts, obviously, going up about 40, almost 41,000 times. Looks like they bought the puts for about $1.97, lifting the offer, kind of going mid-market on the calls, which again, with these size trades, read into the executions with a little bit of a grain of salt. But they could have potentially bought those, or they could have sold call and bought put, which would be, of course, a synthetic short trade on that strike, and probably doing that against the underlying. These types of conversion reversal trades are pretty popular carry trades out there. So that probably is what it is, but it could be someone really taking a flyer on a whole heck of a lot of Bitcoin movement and vol between now and October expiration, in which case it would have to move obviously nearly $9.50 in order for that straddle to pay off. It could, of course, whipsaw around that 61 strike as well. And if they're pretty deft, they could scalp the gamma, scalp the underlying, and of course make some money that way as well. But if you're buying a straddle, you really need that sucker to move between now and October expiration. If it stays around the 61 strike, listeners, around the time of October expiration, that whole roughly $9.43 will go the way of the dodo out there, listeners. So interesting stuff out there. Actually, $9.37 to be precise. So interesting stuff out there in all things IBIT. Would you like that, listeners? Would you buy that for $9.37 here? You're getting a little bit of time, not a ton. You're only getting not even 2 months, really, because we're already well into the SEP cycle at this point. But is that enough time for nearly $10? I mean, we've seen Bitcoin can move that, but it really needs to get going. Interesting stuff. By the way, they did it tied to Deribit at 65, or excuse me, IBIT at 65.88. If you don't know what any of that means, again, go check out some of our educational content like Options Bootcamp to get up to speed. But that is your big trade out there in IBIT today. Now it is time to explore the altcoin universe.
It's time to move beyond Bitcoin and find out what's moving the rest of the crypto marketplace. It's time to boldly venture into the altcoin universe.
All right, everybody, welcome to the altcoin universe, the portion of the show where we dive deep into everything outside of Bitcoin, except for right now when we dive into the market cap battle that is continuing to grip the crypto market. Everyone fighting for a spot in the top 10. Last week, it cost you a little bit shy of $28 billion worth of market cap to break into the top 10. That got you to our old pal Cardano. This week, still Cardano, but cost you a wee bit more, nearly $33 billion, $32.75 billion to be precise. And that gets you again to our old pal Cardano, still holding down the number 10 spot. That means, like Old Faithful, Tron hanging out at number 9, 33 billion exactly. So not much separating these two. The battle continues. Number 8, our old pal Doge, 33.5 billion. So again, actually between 8 and 10, not a heck of a lot really separating them. Number 7, it's USD Coin, 68.1 billion. Number 6, it's Solana, 99 billion, pretty much exactly. Number 5, it's BNB, 117.5 billion. Number 4, it's Tether, 166.8. That means number 3 is still our old pal XRP, still hanging out around the $3 level. That means 181.25 billion in terms of market cap. Number 2, it's ETH, man, over $500 billion in market cap, even with a little bit of a pullback this week. That is, I'm sure for ETH heads, very refreshing to hear. 523 billion to be precise. Obviously, we got higher in ETH intra week, but still just absolutely wild stuff. And the big dog, it's BTC, 2.3 trillion worth of market cap. But let's keep rolling out to the wonderful, the wild world of ETH. I've said it on the Futures Rundown. I just said it earlier on this show. I think ETH is so far the story of the year from an overall asset class perspective. Now, some folks might like a wild meme stock or some other names out there. And it's certainly been good years in gold, and it's good years in the S&P and everything else so far. But in terms of just narrative shifts and massive swings, I don't think we've seen much that can compete with ETH this year. Like I said, the biggest loser on the tape to now one of, if not the biggest winners on the tape. Just absolutely wild stuff out there. Coming back to earth a little bit from its highs, but still up 51 handles when we kicked off the show. 43.48 to be precise. Of course, we all know it got a wee bit higher. Got up to nearly 4,800. Man, that's a wild level, and new all-time highs in ETH. 47.76 roughly. Obviously, it's going to vary depending on which venue you're looking at on the spot side. But yeah, hot stuff out there. New all-time highs. So retreating a bit off that. If you want a glass half empty narrative, you've come off about 400 handles off that high. But on the flip side, still north of 4,000. That's going to make the ETH heads really happy. And it's just been absolutely a wild time. Up 25% just in the last month. You go back the last 6 months, of course, where the lion's share of the move has taken place. You're up nearly 60% out there. And from the absolute nadir, obviously, shy of 1,500, threatening 1,000 in the wrong direction. Obviously, ETH is up pretty much 3x from that nadir down there in April. So again, just a wild move out there in all things ETH. But let's crunch the numbers, shall we? Vol-wise, ETH has been trading at a premium to Bitcoin for a while. That's kind of what we expect. I mean, look at this move in particular right now. ETH is actually moving, unlike Bitcoin. So we expect it to be maintaining that premium, and that is the case. It was at a 70.5 on our weekly vol this time last week, down to about a 68 and a third, but still fairly frothy. You're talking about a 70 versus a roughly 30-odd vol in Bitcoin. So you're talking roughly 2x out there, which again, you can't argue that it's not merited given the movement we're seeing out there in ETH. In fact, maybe you argue it's a little cheap. 68.75 was the 30-day vol. It's still pretty much at that level, coming in about almost half a point, trading right around 68 and a third right now on the 30-day vol. So I think traders out there think the same thing. They're not really crushing the vol. This obviously is moving enough to maintain these vol levels. 6-month vol where the hodlers hang out, 68.25 on the last show, 67.25 this week. So coming in 1 point, but again, still fairly frothy. In fact, if you look at a lot of the assets we talk about trading over there at CME in our This Week in Futures option show, you're going to be hard pressed to find any assets that can rival that ETH vol, with the possible exception of Nat Gas, and that's even below right now at about a 55. So crypto is the place for vol right now. It's just if you want to get a little bit of juice that maybe you think is worth the squeeze, maybe you think it's too cheap. Either way, there's some vol to be found in the crypto complex, in particular ETH. Moving on to the Skew, like we said, that has swung in the other direction. It was obviously pretty positive on our last show. Positive 2.1 on our weekly Skew. That has swung to a -4. Again, we have retreated about 400 handles off the highs, so makes some sense. 30-day Skew, +1 on the last show, -2.1. And again, 30-day Skew is where more folks are going to be looking. And then going on out to where the hodlers hang out, 6-month Skew, +3.25. And you know what? Most of that premium is still intact. It's only come down half a point to positive 2 3/4. So unlike Bitcoin, where it seems like the hodlers have kind of given up, at least for right now, no real premium to be found, where the ETH hodlers are hanging out, they're feeling a little optimistic. Still almost a positive 3, which again, in the history of ETH is actually not that high of a premium. We've seen it get much higher. But then again, new all-time highs, you can be forgiven for expecting maybe a little bit of exhaustion and a little bit of retracement out there in the world of ETH. Speaking of the world of ETH and kind of some related hot names that have been just lighting up the tape, we talked about Bitminer, aka BMiner, BMNR, on the show last week, and it's been just a wild name to watch out there, listeners. Coming into the start of the show today, we had good old Bitmine Immersion Technologies, aka BMNR, coming in. It was at 56.5 when we kicked off the show. That's down about 4.5 points. It has continued to fall as the show has continued, down to about 54 3/4. So giving up nearly another 2 points. So down almost 6.5, about 6 1/4 points from where it was this time on the show last week. So good old BMiner, aka Bitminer, continuing to move to the downside, which is kind of interesting. ADV, though, moving in the other direction. 162,000 contracts a day changing hands in BMNR. That's up 37,000 from this time last week. So hot stuff, and already blowing that away today. It was at 180,000 by the time we started the show. And guess what? Closing in on 250,000 contracts right now. So BMNR, all these crypto related names continuing to just generate a metric ton of flow out there. Let's see really quickly. Yeah, the hot option in BMNR right now, it's the AUG 70s, 21, almost 22,000 of those going up right now. 70 seems like it's a bit in the rear view mirror right now, but maybe not. Actually, it looks like it might be a 60-70 vertical going up 21, almost 22,000 times. Opening on both, so maybe paper coming in to buy a little bit more upside. Let's see if we can look really quickly. And by the way, these are expiring this Friday on the 22nd. So when I say August, it's in the weeklies. Yeah, they went up at the same time, not marked spread, but it looks like they went up, and looks like paper probably buying that vertical. Opening definitely on the 60. So what it could also be, and probably makes a little bit more sense, listeners, is a roll down. Also worth noting, 53 puts also traded at the same time. 53 puts and 57 puts. So it looks like we might have a bit of an iron condor, listener. Maybe this is more up your alley. Looks like it's the 70-60 call spread, I should say, against the 57-53 put spread. All that trading in one lot of 8,000, and they kept coming back and doing it more, obviously, on the day. So interesting. Iron condor could be a bit of a roll as well. Looks like it's definitely opening on the 53 puts and on the 60 calls. So they could be rolling down the calls and also rolling down the puts, which is kind of interesting out there. You like that, listeners? An iron condor / roll in good old Bitminer. Either way, a lot of action out there, nearly 250,000 contracts. If you're wondering, what is the vol in a wild name like that? It's at about 123. That's still pretty hot, even though it is down a whopping 41 points from where it was this time last week. And speaking of things continuing to fall, our old pal Circle continuing to fall out of bed. It was at a 145.5 when we kicked off the show, down 16.5 points from where it was this time last week. Has continued to fall as the show has continued down to 142.25. So giving up another 2.25 handles out there. So just absolutely wild stuff. Our buddy Mr. Bill, I wonder if he's still out there slinging some puts. The put wing is not, shall we say, as rich as it once was out there. That's also reflected in the vol. The vol coming in, it's down 18 points to a 67 right now. So again, not quite getting as much juice on those puts as you were. So not quite attractive, or as attractive as I should say. That's why I've kind of curtailed some of my premium harvesting out there as well. But it seems like the volume maybe drying up a little bit as well. The ADV is 201,000. It's actually up 8,000, which is good. But today only about 100,000 on the tape. So exactly half of their ADV. Going up in Circle right now, the hot option out there, it's the 140 puts going up nearly 7,000 times, which again, we're threatening that strike right now. So makes some sense. Looks like they went up for an average price of about $3.30. Would you be a buyer or a seller? Those expire at the end of this week. If you're collecting $3.30, good for you. But remember, you could be wearing it on those puts by the end of the week. So you might be popping some tons before you earn that $3.30. And I put earn in air quotes. But if you're sweating for it, at the end of the day, all premium sellers know then you actually earned it. Out to Solana we go. Actually managing to buck the trend, rallying a bit this week. 177.69 on our last show. 183.75 this week. Up a little over about $6.06 from last week. XRP $3.19 last week. Giving some of that back to the market gods this week. Down 13 cents to $3.06. Still north of $3. Still managing to hold on to that number 3 spot. So I'm sure Bill's wife will be happy. Dogecoin hanging out pretty much unched on the week. 22.3 cents, right around 22 cents on the show last week. Litecoin 125 and about a half last week. 117.91 this week, down about 7 2/3 points on the week. Cardano 78.9 cents last week, 91.8 cents this week. So Cardano getting a nice lift. Not enough to break into the number 9 spot, but pretty darn close. Up nearly 13 cents on the week. Polkadot literally unched 392 last week, 392 this week. And everybody's favorite, Shiba Inu. If you're hoping for the Shiba Lambos, maybe you want to wait another week. It was a million zeros, 131 on the show last week. This week, 126. All right, that is going to do it for the crypto rundown this week. Not going to do it for the network, though. I'll be back in a little over half an hour, right after the closing bell, to break down all of the action out there in the world of options today with the Hot Options Report, the latest addition to the network. Of course, I want to thank our guest, Scott Shapiro from Coinbase, joining us to give us an update on all the latest additions on the crypto derivatives front. Spoiler alert, there's a lot over there at Coinbase. If you thought they didn't care about the derivative side of crypto, you're in for a rude awakening. They got a lot of stuff coming at you, so stay tuned. You know where to find Coinbase by now. And you also know where to find, hopefully, our friends over there at Amber Data, amberdata.io, the place to go to kick the tires and light the fires. If you want more data on all this fun stuff we're talking about here, and a whole bunch more, they've added in Circle and a whole bunch of other cool stuff over the last couple of months. Head on over there, amberdata.io, the place to go to kick the tires and light the fires. Back again in a little bit for the Hot Options Report. Back again tomorrow for one of the other new additions to the network, the European Market Brief. Then back with our usual array of content till we're back again next Monday, another episode of the Crypto Rundown. Stay safe out there, everybody.
The Crypto Rundown is brought to you by Amber Data. If you're entering the digital asset class, you'll need access to granular on-chain and market data from multiple venues to power research, trading, risk management, and compliance. Amber Data delivers comprehensive data and insights into blockchain networks, crypto markets, and decentralized finance, empowering financial institutions to apply traditional finance methods to digital assets. Amber Data eliminates the infrastructure setup, integration challenges, and maintenance headaches to access digital asset data, reducing cost and time to market to enter the digital asset class. Learn more and download their digital asset data guide at www.amberdata.io. You're listening to the Options Insider Radio Network, the home of the Options Podcast. For more quality options programs, visit theoptionsinsider.com or search for Options Insider Radio Network in your podcast provider of choice. Listeners can also access all of our programming through our mobile app available in the iTunes and Google Play stores. Select programs are also available via live stream at mixlr.com/options-insider. That's mixlr.com/options-insider. Don't forget to follow along with your favorite programs and submit your own questions for the hosts at twitter.com/options, stocktwits.com/options, facebook.com/theoptionsinsider, or via questions@theoptionsinsider.com.